Well, hello. You are hiking with Jenny. It's winter. It has snowed. We just got dumped on with I don't know, 10 inches of snow maybe on the coast. And it is prime snowshoeing conditions right now. So I thought I would do a little video today on winter hiking and, as in the case right now, snowshoeing. The trails where I'm from tend to empty out quite a bit in the winter time, and understandably it takes a little extra prep in the winter to make sure you have all the right gear and you're prepared for the conditions and all that. It's not just a simple matter of just getting in your car and hopping out in flip-flops and shorts. And I myself have been guilty of kind of taking the easy route and not hiking when I really should kind of push myself to get out there more. But I'm trying to change that because this winter has been a good winter for hiking, actually, because we're not seeing as much of the rapid freezing and thawing as we've seen in other winters where it just created really poor trail conditions. I mean, the snow is like pretty ideal. It's like nice and like fluffy. I have two types of snowshoes. I've got these, which have like kind of a tube on the outside. They still have the crampon on the bottom. I think these are best for flat trails, whereas the other snowshoes I have, the MSR ones, have kind of like the teeth on the outside for like extra grippiness, and you really sink in more in those, so they're better for like climbing up mountains. So because I am prepping for an overnight winter backpacking trip, I figured I would share some of my tips for winter hiking and backpacking that I've learned, sometimes the hard way, over the years. We've already touched on one of them. It's footwear. So I have my snowshoes on for these conditions, but a lot of times in the winter you might not know what the trail conditions are going to be like, sometimes until you get there. There are websites you can check to see what was it like recently, but these aren't always the most up to date because conditions can change from day to day, sometimes hour to hour. So you might not know what it's like till you get there. So having things in your car ready to go, if you get to the trailhead and it's like, okay, trail is not broken down at all, so gonna need my snowshoes. Or, you might want to throw like a pair of microspikes in your pack in case conditions are icy. Generally, you want to have a pair of boots. These ones that I have, they are Mountain Warehouse, and I think you can still buy these actually. I do have a link in my description. They're like the most waterproof boots I have ever worn, but I don't take them out often because they are very, very warm. But I will wear these for, deep winter conditions, below freezing. I'll wear these. The other pair of boots I have are not insulated like these. They are the Ultra all-weather boots. They are not waterproof. They are supposed to be, but they're not. They're more like water resistant. I'll still wear those. I'll wear them with waterproof socks, which are also not waterproof, but they're water resistant as well. So basically when those soak through, I just change to another pair of waterproof socks, and usually by that point I'll have made it back to my car. But yeah, those I wear for day hikes. I wear if it's going to be a little on the warmer side. And by the way, if you're interested in any of the gear I'm talking about, I will throw some links up in the description. For leg wear, I usually, honestly, They have pants that are just like a jack of all trades. Like you can wear them and it's one piece and they're waterproof and they're heavy duty. I don't have anything like that. What I do have is layers. These are just like a thin pair of Columbia bootcut hiking pants, and I like them because they're stretchy, so I feel like I have more movement in them, but obviously not really warm enough in deep winter conditions. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll layer these with either rain pants or snow pants, depending how cold it is. And that's usually enough for me. I don't really tend to run cold, so usually, and especially if I'm moving, that's plenty enough. When I get to camp and I stop moving, I would layer them with a fleece base layer. You could also use merino wool. That's perfectly fine, or really anything synthetic. And yeah, I'll just layer up. If it was gonna be super, super cold and I was gonna be sitting around camp for a long time, I might also wear down pants. That isn't something I'm planning to bring on this trip, but if I knew I was going in for like a short overnight or like a car camping thing, I would for sure bring my down pants because they're so warm. And just as a general rule, layering is key. Having a base layer, a mid layer, and then a outer shell layer, because then you have layers that you can remove if you get too warm, or put on more layers if you get cold. That's exactly what I have on right now. So I've got my outer shell. This is just like a cheap winter coat I have. It's not really well insulated, but it has a good shell layer, so it keeps the wind out. Underneath this, I have on my EMS Ascent fleece, which zips up so I can remove it easily if I get too warm. And underneath that, I have my Columbia synthetic long sleeve shirt, which is very soft and comfy. It's usually a good idea to have a good pair of gloves. I like to wear gloves that give me more dexterity. These ones have the grippies, but they're not waterproof. If I want something waterproof, like if I'm expecting rain, or if I'm going to be doing things like filtering water, I'll want a pair of waterproof gloves. And for that, I have the Showa gloves, which I did bring on my AT through hike. They're basically like meant for handling stuff in the freezer or something, but they work really well at being waterproof. For a hat, I have this one on right now. It is a microgrid fleece hat from Walhalla. I got it at HangCon. The inside of it is lined with alpha fleece. This is a new piece of gear, and I don't think it's as warm as some other hats that I have, but it's nice in these conditions. It's only like 30 degrees right now. So this is fine. Again, I don't really run cold, so I just need something on my head typically. I do have a thicker one that I will be bringing on this trip. And then I usually also, if I'm at camp, I layer on all of my hoods and that keeps me plenty warm. I'm not wearing it right now, but I have a fleece buff, which I would wear around my neck. And it's sort of like a scarf, but it's a lot lighter weight and more packable. It's really important, if you know it's going to be below freezing, that you keep your water from freezing, because if it's pretty much useless if it just becomes a solid block of ice and there's no way to thaw it out. If you're going to be hiking during the day, and let's say, you know, you have a water bottle in your side pocket like I usually do, store it upside down. Make sure that it's not going to leak and store it upside down. And what that does is it makes sure that the top of it where the water comes out is the last to freeze, so you can still get water out of it even if it starts freezing. Keeping it close to your body is also a good idea to keep it warm longer. In wintertime, I would not typically recommend bringing smart water bottles. I would recommend actually bringing a Nalgene, because what you can do is you can fill it with hot water and then it will prevent water from freezing longer. I recently picked up something called a bottle boot from 40 Below to keep my water from freezing, and I'm really excited to test it out on this trip that I have coming up. If I was just going out for a day hike, I wouldn't worry too much about my water freezing because I'm not going to be out super long. But one tip that I picked up is I bought this like Stanley thermos, and I'll make hot soup, pour it in there, and then take it on my drive up north. I would get up to the Whites, it's like a 2-hour drive, sometimes 2.5. Start hiking, and then halfway through my hike, I'd unscrew the cap and enjoy hot soup because it would still be hot, hours later. Having something warm in your stomach when it's like super cold, it's just such a morale boost, and it's just so energizing. Especially you got something that has a little protein in it, has a little salt in it, some carbs. It's just so good. Hot soup is just the best in winter. On the subject of freezing water, if you do bring a water filter, that's something else you have to be very careful does not freeze, because once it freezes, it's no longer going to work. So you want to either keep it in a warm inner pocket or use some other method of water purification. For an overnight trip, I'm probably just going to bring as much water as I'll need. I'm probably gonna bring 2 liters, and then I'll bring aqua tabs, which are just like little tablets you put in the water to purify it. And that will be like as an emergency scenario. Last resort, you could also boil snow, although this is very time consuming. If you're going on an overnight, a fire is always a really nice thing to have, especially if you're camping with somebody and you're going to be hanging out for a while, because just sitting in the cold isn't that great. But if you have a fire, it just can make all the difference. I would try and bring some fire starter, something to light the fire with, obviously, and maybe a folding saw. So that's something that I recently picked up, was a lightweight folding saw that I can use to, saw up small pieces of wood to build a fire with. Electronics. Just like you need to be careful about your water freezing, you also have to watch out for your electronics, because a lot of times super cold temperatures can kill the battery life on your devices. So it's a good idea to keep such devices close to your body at night, in your sleeping bag, so they don't freeze. In the event that your electronics do die, you'll want to have some kind of battery bank with you as kind of an emergency way to charge it. So I usually bring a fully charged Anchor charger. One thing to keep in mind for winter hiking is if you're doing it in snow, it can be very slow going. So just keeping that into account when you plan your trips and trying to reduce the number of miles that you're doing could make a huge difference. Even this trip is taking a lot longer than I expected, because when every step that you take, you kind of sink into the snow, and then you have to lift your leg up that much more. And while a step or two is not a huge deal, if you're doing that over the course of the whole hike, you end up expending a lot more energy than you would if there weren't any snow. Try not to plan too many miles, because you might be hiking in the dark. So this wasn't meant to be an exhaustive list of all of the tips for winter backpacking and hiking, but if you have any tips, please leave them in the comments, and I will see you next week on my next winter backpacking trip. I'm so excited. It's gonna be interesting. I think we're gonna get more snow. So it is going to be quite an adventure. Maybe we'll have a blizzard. Oh. Thank you for watching and happy trails.